Hey guys. This is part 4 of What If Shikamaru was the main character. Hit like and subscribe if you like this one, and also please check the author in the description. Let's start. Chapter 16. Cut Their Threads. NBU Emergency Medical Services. Hiruzen Sarutobi's heart nearly stopped right then and there. What did you say? He's dying, Jiraiya confirmed with finality as he got to work immediately. The curse seal lines were mere inches away from Kakashi's heart. If he had arrived even 30 minutes later, it would have been too late. But he's not dead yet. I think I can save him. Well, more like buy him a few more decades. Oh. Alright then, but there are 3 problems. 1. I do not know how much of him I can save at this point. If all goes well, then chances are he won't die because of this curse. That he'd probably fall in battle to something else shinobi-related was left unsaid between them. They both knew the truth, anyway. There was no point in aggravating it any further. If I'm going to be optimistic, I can also probably stop the spread of the poison completely, Jiraiya said, setting up the proper barriers. So he won't deteriorate any further over time. But don't get your hopes up. Anyway, that's problem number 1. What are the other 2? The Sande mast? 2. I cannot stop what damage that has already been done, Jiraiya said. So all this crap will probably be stuck here for as long as he lives. If he survives. I'm not too sure about anything at this point. His body could react in a variety of ways, regardless of what help I give him. In the best case scenario, it might just end up being a benign parasite, like his Sharingan. There is also a chance, however, that it could negatively interfere with his chakra pathways and cause anything from mild discomfort to a permanent handicap for the rest of his life. It may, in severe cases, completely cripple his chakra network and render him unable to use any chakra again. Unable to use chakra, Hiruzen breathed. That's the worst case, short of death, Jiraiya said. I don't want to get too pessimistic before I even begin, so I will note now that the most likely case will be a partial loss. The rest of him will be fine, hopefully. But I can't make promises for what has already been affected. Chakra-wise, of course. The problem is completely isolated within his chakra network because of the nature of the seal, so he'll still be able to use taijutsu. Like that loud green one with the funky eyebrows. Meito guy, Hiruzen corrected. Whatever. Don't care, Jiraiya said curtly. Because the third problem is that this, he swept his hand across the black mass on Kakashi's side, will take me an ass-ton of work. And I really do mean an ass-ton. How much is this ass-ton you speak of? Hiruzen asked. At least 2 days. Maybe even 3. And I'll be working straight through the nights, no breaks. He'll need intensive care for that whole time. I'll probably have a few clones running at a time so I can at least get enough sleep and food to not make any stupid mistakes. But it's still going to be a hell of a miserable time for me. Jiraiya began angrily ripping what superficial remnants of the cursed seal he could from Kakashi's skin. Already naturally pale, he was an even sicklier shade of white underneath the bright fluorescent lights of the compound, making the ugly dark markings stand out even more. So why don't you go out there, and do your little Hokage thing, and tell all your people that I don't want to be bothered by any distractions until I give the all-clear. And when I say no distractions, I really do mean no distractions, sensei. One false step could lead to this entire operation falling to pieces. Only unless there's something that's going to end up killing us both anyway. Do I want a messenger down here telling me to run for my life? If that's what you need, Hiruzen sighed, and turned to leave. For Kakashi, he would do it. It was the least he could give him. And in all honesty, Hiruzen felt that out of moral obligation he should be doing more to repay Kakashi for all he had done to him in the past few days. It was thanks to him that the plan had gone so right even when it all had gone so wrong. This could very easily have ended in a sand invasion and a wayward Sasuke Uchiha after all, despite their greatest precautions against it. Now, at least, the situation of the sand was precarious at best, and Orochimaru wouldn't be causing any trouble for quite some time. His former student might have made himself immortal, but his power meant nothing without a fully operational nervous system to control it. Wherever Orochimaru was, it wasn't here. He'd abandoned his body as soon as it was clear that the mess was unsalvageable, just as he abandoned anything that was devoid of its former use to him. Really, what a way to reward a man who had helped tip the scale in their favor, with an unerasable curse mark. Although, the Hokage also felt that he shouldn't be forced to take credit for all of the blame for all of the cruelties that life had dealt Kakashi Hatake. The Hokage himself had only given the orders, unfair as they were. The rest of that had been a combination of other conspiring individuals, and Kakashi's own terrible luck. He had paid for his natural-born genius with his misfortune, a victim of his own success. That was how the world worked for a shinobi. The talented ones always fell the hardest. It was the rule. Excuses, excuses, Hiruzen snorted. Are you really blaming all this on bad luck of all things? Like you could have done better, the Sandaime replied. It's so easy to be morally upstanding when you're not calling the shots, Hiruzen. Maybe you should let me call the shots then, Hokage-sama, Hiruzen told him. And Konoha would be overrun by traitors and demons in a week, the Sandaime declared with finality. You know it's true, it already is, Hiruzen shrugged. Just look at yourself. At least I'm kind enough to pretend I'm not, said the Sandaime. Even if someone came along and flipped the world on its side, it would still turn. None of them could help what was happening to them right now. None of us can help? Listen to yourself speak. Hiruzen laughed to himself. You call that kindness, Hokage-sama? The temporary Sunigakure base. While the Hokage fretted about Konohagakure no Sato, Sunigakure no Sato was fretting about the Kazekage, or rather, their sudden lack of one. It was an entirely different, but no less dire, problem. Sunigakure was the least populated of all the hidden villages, and that had both its upsides and downsides. More downsides than upsides, actually. In everything, from manpower to economy, they would be outnumbered. There was the idea that with less people, they would be able to be more focused in individual training per man, which was true. Baki liked to think that the genin from Suna, in this round of Chunin exams, at least, were, on average, superior to the genin from Konoha. Only the best were allowed in, and only the best were allowed out. Not like Konoha, which handed out forehead protectors even to kids who couldn't use chakra. But what Konoha lacked in average ability, they made up for with their very top members. The spread in skill was just insane. Most of the Konoha nin were nothing special, but as soon as one of their San nin or White Fang or Yellow Flash or Copy nin or whatever showed up to carry the rest of the team, whatever advantage the opposing side had cooked up beforehand would just implode on itself. It was no secret that Konoha spat out prodigies just like the mist spat out swordsmen. They boasted the most brand name ninja out of any village. His fellow jonin in Suna often sneered that being famous defeated the purpose of being a ninja, but Baki liked to be realistic. That these men could become famous and stay famous, even with so many people after all those heads crammed into the front pages of the bingo book, said quite a bit about their skill. Even better, if they never even got caught in the first place. Baki loved his village and he loved his country, but he would never try to delude himself into thinking that an idiotic plan like the fourth Kazekage had come up with would ever work. Even if they did manage to hurt the leaf, it would only hurt the sand even more. And, at the moment, the leaf was the village that had the greater ability to resist damage. They could blow up half of their buildings, and the resulting reparation costs would barely dip into their coffers. He had respected his former leader, who was a powerful and capable shinobi by his own right, but his extremist policies had cost them dearly. The sand was not the center of the world, none of the villages really were. But if there was one village that stood out above the rest, it would not be the sand. Maybe Cloud, if they could ignore all of Konoha's stupid cheat code Kekkai Genkai and, literally, insane prodigies. He hadn't believed it when Temari claimed that Kakashi Hatake had tried to flirt with her all those months ago when they had been assigned to gate duty. But then Gaara had confirmed the answer, and what Gaara said was law as far as anyone in Suna was concerned. Except, of course, for Gaara's father, but he was dead now. Had been for quite some time, actually, and according to the latest reports, so was Orochimaru. That was how they had even discovered the murder in the first place, actually. Orochimaru had been impersonating the Kazekage for who knew how long. Maybe since this entire scheme had started. Baki liked to think so, that the downright idiotic decisions that Central Command had been handing down for months now was simply the result of foreign infiltration and not, well, actual idiocy. But deep inside his heart he was very well aware that desperate men were wholly capable of such imbecilic trains of thought. That the Council of Sunigakure still wanted to proceed with this invasion even after all that had happened had only solidified his belief. No. I refuse, Baki said for what seemed like the 100th time. I supported the invasion only because I was following orders, but now that I am acting Kazekage, you will listen to me, and realize that this was a stupid idea from the very beginning. Orochimaru betrayed his own village first, so why are you so surprised when our village came next? Anyway, look where he is now. Dead. And the help he promised us is useless without him at the head. Maybe we can take on Konoha alone, without his army of mutants. Maybe we can't. What I do know is this, it will be costly for both of us. And why should we waste time and sweat and blood of our own men, trying to finish this half-man half-creature's purpose, when all he has achieved is ruin for himself and for us? But then what do we do about the whole money issue? Money. It was all about money. This whole system was a broken one. That is a matter with the daimyo, not with Konoha, Baki explained. Part of the reason why Konoha's rates are so low is because they are on good terms with their daimyo, who funds them well. Their government subsidizes them, causing them to become a good return on investment, which only earns them more subsidies. If we could just get our daimyo to realize the importance of having a domestic source of military power, he might just spare the extra costs. Then, in a few years' time, we could prove to him that his temporarily higher expenses really did pay off. If not, then we'll find someone else in his court who supports us, and fund him instead. It will be easier to carry out a bit of political subterfuge among civilians than launching a full-scale invasion of what is basically another self-sufficient military base. Come to think of it, that pattern of thought might be exactly why we are not on good terms with our daimyo. Sir, what? What will we tell the other sand forces? That the invasion is called off, of course. No dying here, I meant your team. And the demon Uragara? Baki had no answer to that question. ANBU intelligence. Call from above. There's been a change in plans, Ibiki-san, and Noichi Yamanaka said, striding into the room. The guise is over. Everyone with suspicious affiliations to Sand or Orochimaru is to be detained immediately, except for the Ichibi, which will be dealt with when Jiraiya-sama gets back to us. I don't know what the Sandaime has in store for them. Right now, our focus is dismantling Orochimaru's support base before he can do whatever he normally does to keep from dying. Our main goal is trying to find out as much as we can about his secret techniques and prior activities in the process. Already on it, Ibiki said. Either dispatch squads, or try to fix the summoning seal network, whatever. But we have to account for all of them, said Inoichi. Got it, Ibiki said, and turned back to his radio set. Central TNI to all tracker squads, repeat. Central TNI to all tracker squads. The snake has been temporarily beheaded. All tags, potential or confirmed, are to be reassigned to priority headquarters at your greatest convenience. Whatever you do, do not let them escape. Any good method that will lure them in is authorized. Summoning seal networks are still down. Mid-command, he paused, and then turned back to Inoichi. Are there any plans to keep them for negotiations once the conversation is over, sir? What about the loose threads? Team Salamander Alpha replied. Do we sew them back or cut them loose? Inoichi shook his head. Cut their threads, Ibiki told him. There was a pregnant pause, and then the radio buzzed back to life. Even the kids? Kids? Sure, they were kids. Kids playing ninja that got caught up with the wrong leader. Yeah, but no. Their lives, rights, and free will had been forfeit the moment they put on those forehead protectors with the sound symbol on them. Besides, they were already 14. Teenagers. He had known people who, at half their age, were deadlier than he was now. There was no forgiveness in the world of shinobi. Not children, not the elderly, not people who only appeared to be civilians. Those that trusted, and trusted wrongly, ended up dead. They were going to hell for this. But he didn't really mind because he was already going to hell. If there was even a hell to go to. Assuming that this place they called Earth wasn't hell already, then he could at least expect some good company when he finally ended up there. After all, Inoichi Yamanaka was a pretty decent guy, and his buddies all were too. Heaven was for boring people. Of course, chances were, with his luck, the section of hell he ended up in would be just the same as home. Yes, he told them. Even the kids. His eyes met Inoichi's, and they nodded. It was necessary, Ibiki said. Yes, Inoichi agreed. It was necessary, and then Ibiki folded back his arms, and waited. So, Orochimaru, huh? Inoichi's voice suddenly cut in, his tone dangerous. Would you like to tell me exactly happened here? Oh joy, Ibiki thought. The only thing worse than a pissed-off superior is a pissed-off parent. Other than the fact that we were expecting Sand, not Orochimaru, and all the ANBU in the area responded to the best of their ability? All 6 of the rookies who were attacked survived. Orochimaru, on the other hand, didn't. This seemed to placate Inoichi somewhat, but he still looked very unhappy. So what's this about Shikaka's son almost dying? Ibiki winced. He used the cage main to trick Orochimaru into injuring himself. That might have single-handedly saved the lives of the rookies. Well, that, and the other 30 ANBU who bought them enough time to run in the first place. The troubling thing is we're still not sure how, despite having reviewed the tapes about 30 times. Inoichi shook his head. That boy. Too smart for his own good, so Ibiki grunted. How is Shikaku? He's furious, naturally. Of course, you wouldn't be able to tell, just looking at him. Inoichi trailed off. I'm more concerned about Hatake. After the incident, we had to inform all the Jonin sensei of the participating teams of what happened. The thing is, we couldn't seem to find Team 7's Jonin sensei. I don't know where Hatake is, Ibiki said. Officially. Unofficially. He was there, wasn't he? Inoichi deadpanned. He was the guy the sealing team said took a curse seal to the shoulder, and the reason why I had to deal with a pile of liquefied brain instead of a proper corpse in the morgue. That was him. How is he? Ibiki shook his head. He's gone completely nuts. Oh, so he's normal, then, Inoichi quipped. Yeah, Ibiki agreed, and then suddenly, they were both laughing like mad, laughing like it was the funniest thing they had ever heard since forever. Which it was. They were laughing, because the only other alternative was to be scared out of their wits. Because if they actually started to admit that they cared for their comrades, outside of their use as skilled shinobi, they'd all be too goddamn terrified to do anything useful ever again. Orochimaru was dead. But he wouldn't stay dead. Anyone who had half a brain knew this. Seriously, though, Inoichi finally managed to spit out, how is he? Ibiki sobered up. If you really want to know, the poor guy, he's completely incoherent. The top guys in the sealing division are doing all that they can, but they're completely lost. Luckily, Jiraiya-sama was already headed toward Konoha, but even then, we're not sure if he'll make it. Damn, said Inoichi. I hope the poor bastard makes it out alive, don't we all? Ibiki said loftily. I'm serious. He has got to live. He just has to. I've dealt with too much of his shit, just to have him quit on us just like that. My daughter will be heartbroken. And I don't even want to know what Shikaka's son would get up to if he dies. He's an overly curious kid. Overly curious kids tend to get killed, no matter how smart they are, Ibiki said. Unless they're too smart, in which case none of us stand a chance, Inoichi shot back. Ibiki thought about that. The problem with smart people was that you never knew exactly how smart they were. Especially kids. They were volatile. They had too much potential, and they rarely knew what they were capable of or just how much of an effect their actions could have on the world, except for Shikamaru and Nara. Something told Ibiki he always knew exactly what he was going to do at any given moment in time, which was even more worrisome. The thing was, the kid was just too normal for someone in his situation. The stories of what became of Konoha prodigies were all too common in the shinobi world. With civilians, parents who pushed their children too much too early only ever had to worry about ending up with burnouts for adults. But of course, with ninja, you either would up with the fragile-minded at best, or guys like Orochimaru or Itachi Uchiha at worst, if you weren't careful. Then again, Shikaku Nara might have had something to do with it. He was no idiot. He would have known the proper way to approach raising an overly special child so that he was challenged but not destroyed. It was just that the guy was so lazy sometimes that Ibiki wondered how he kept up with his own son. Surely a kid like that would have been able to sneak some things past his own father? The man was simply an unusually smart human, not an omniscient god. He wouldn't be able to notice every single time his son pulled one over him. Well, at least it wouldn't be anything too bad, even if he did. As far as Ibiki was concerned, the boy was relatively stable compared to his predecessors. He was a bit of a workaholic, according to Shikaku Nara, but then again, everyone was a workaholic compared to him. The important thing was, the boy had been raised knowing the importance of keeping himself emotionally and psychologically balanced. There was still that niggling feeling in the back of Ibiki's head, however. That niggling feeling that he was capable of something far darker than he let on, just like every other child prodigy that had successfully flown under the radar during their psych evaluations. But it was not Ibiki's place to think about the matters of another man's family. All he could do at the moment was focus on the task at hand. Late on the second day, Konoha Team 9 had arrived at the exit to the maze, after having annihilated some other group from grass 30 meters before the final bend. Shortly afterwards, when the sun was rising on the third day, the team from the sound sauntered in cockily, straight into Ibiki's warm and welcoming arms. Chunin Guy. We're done with your pathetically easy test. What do you want us to do now? The loud and stupid one, the one with the pipes in his arms, boasted. You don't seriously expect us to waste our time waiting for the other guys to come in, do you? Of course not. Right this way, Ibiki as random Chunin told them politely. Heh, the stupid one laughed. Hey, what is this place? Where are we going? We've been walking for a really long time, you know. We're leaving the compound, Ibiki explained. It's a rather large place, since this canyon is far away from the population center, so unfortunately you'll have to walk for a while longer. But at least this tunnel is indoors and air-conditioned, unlike the original dirt trail you took to get out here, right? We didn't walk this far getting out to this place, though, the bandaged one pointed out. Where are you taking us, exactly? Your new home for the rest of your life, Ibiki said cheerfully, pulling back the door to the interrogation cell and shoving them inside. They broke in 2 hours and 24 minutes. Take them away, Ibiki ordered, and the sobbing, spineless messes that had once been human were dragged away to the execution chambers. Sir, the intercom buzzed again. Team Kabuto is approaching the end gate. I'll be right up there, Ibiki said, reapplying the hinge. Double security on that one. What about the ones still in the maze? Bring them in too. Chapter 17, Raising the Fighting Spirit. The Chunin exam preliminaries. Kakashi-sensei wasn't there. That was all Ino's mind could process at the moment. Kakashi-sensei wasn't there. She wasn't even listening to the Hokage speak. Something about preliminary matches, and how the exams were a replacement for war. All she knew was that, of the 5 teams that had arrived at the gates before time was up, the 3 Konoha rookies, plus Gai-sensei's team, and the team from Sand, only 4 of their respective jonin were present. Kurenai-sensei, Asuma-sensei, Gai-sensei, and the guy from Sand. There was an empty gap in the line where Kakashi-sensei should have been. Ino felt her knees go weak. Naruto didn't look like he was doing too well, either. But if Shikamaru could still stand, albeit in a rather wobbly manner, while still recovering from massive chakra exhaustion, then so could they. He wasn't even supposed to be out of bed, technically. But he had somehow managed to bully the medics into letting him go down into the pit with his team under the condition that he didn't engage in any other physical activity. So she grit her teeth and made herself pretend like nothing was wrong, just like all the other candidates in the pit. When everyone attentively responded to the Hokage's speech, she responded, too. When everyone moved up to the balconies, she moved with them. Just be one with the crowd. Act like everyone else. And you'll be okay. And, she was fine. She was fine. She was fine. We're going to be fine, Naruto, she said. Naruto nodded and gave her a weak little smile. Theirs was the only team without an adult standing behind them, and by God it was obvious. They stuck out like a sore thumb. Never before had she felt so self-conscious. Ino was a confident person by nature. She was the one who set the new rules. She was the one who people turned to when they wanted to know how to be popular and cool. She had felt the trials and tribulations of mood swings and little things like that, but not actual social problems. Now, she felt little and lonely and lost, and for the first time in her life she sort of understood how most other people felt when they felt awkward. She felt someone tap her shoulder, and, by default, looked to the opposite side. She was too used to Kakashi-sensei's little pranks by now. Something stupid and hopeful in her brain had actually expected Kakashi-sensei to be there. His lazy eyes and his silly smile and his sing-song voice saying sorry I'm late, and then spouting off some random excuse like he always did, but there was nothing. She turned to the other side. It was just Naruto. He made a little waving motion with his hand. The Sandaime Hokage wanted to see them. To talk to them, it seemed. In private. As soon as they had exited the room out into the hall, the Hokage asked them, "Are you 3 doing all right?" "Yes," Naruto answered for them. And then, the waterfall of words came out again, and Ino didn't even bother to stop him like she normally did. "How's Kakashi-sensei? Where is he? Why isn't he here? Is it that bad?" The Hokage pinched the bridge of his nose and tiredly muttered something under his breath that sounded suspiciously like, "You 3 weren't supposed to figure it out so easily. He is fine. He had a doctor's appointment that he couldn't miss. It was a sudden thing. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it." They couldn't do anything right now but worry about it. Ino stole a glance at Shikamaru. He had a weird look on his face. It was that look he got every time he was about to do something unbearably brilliant. Brilliant, but risky. That was always Shikamaru. For all his caution on the field, regarding everyone else, he always seemed to push himself the most. "Is he okay?" Naruto pressed. "He is fine. We are giving him the best treatment possible," the Hokage promised them. "But is it enough?" Naruto insisted. "You have to be specific about these things. We have to know, old man." "That's our sensei you're talking about. He will live," the Sandaime said curtly. "I promise you. He will live." "Live? Is that it?" The Hokage leveled them with a look. "What do you mean?" "Well, you know, what if he lives, but he never walks again, or something? What if he will live, and he will recover to be healthy enough to return to active duty?" the Sandaime told them firmly. At this, Naruto finally silenced. I can't tell if he's lying or not, Ino thought. But Anbu, Ino cut in. How come was he with them? I thought he quit. He's our Jonin-sensei. He can't just leave us like that. The Hokage looked even older than he did now. He's not. This was no mission from me, you realize. He is a skilled ninja, a trained infiltrator, and a former ANBU associate with easy access to a mask and uniform. It would not have been difficult for him. Why? Shikamaru suddenly asked. It's against the rules for Jonin to become involved in any exams that their genin students are participating in, as you know, the Sandaime explained. But you three have learned time and time again that he is not normally one to follow the rules. He only wanted to protect you three. As for my end, I turned a blind eye to him because, well, I sympathized with his desire to protect his teammates. Besides, we could not stop the exams in the middle. Because of keeping face, you understand. There will be many foreigners present at the finals. That wasn't what I meant, Shikamaru said softly, and Ino could see him drawing all the right conclusions within the span of a few milliseconds. He knew about that entire thing. Or at least about sand. Whatever. So why were we entered in the first place? It was not a question. It was a demand. Shikamaru was demanding answers. Lovely. When Shikamaru demanded answers for anything, he would get those answers, regardless of whether the person he was asking actually answered them or not. He had his special little ways. Ino, as the Yamanaka in the team, was technically in charge of information gathering, not him. But at least she knew when to quit. Shikamaru didn't. If he wanted something, he'd figure out a way to get it, or exhaust himself trying. The idiot. The Hokage was silent for a few seconds. That is not something I can explain to you out in the open like this. Your father will be able to tell you, better than me. I see. Thank you, Hokage-sama, Shikamaru said respectfully. Come on, guys. Let's go. Ino, Naruto, you feel that you are not in the right state of mind to continue testing. You may opt out, the Sandaime said gently. Ino actually considered it, but no. She was almost ashamed of herself. After all that Kakashi-sensei had suffered through, they were just going to quit? She wanted to pass this test more than ever now. She wanted to, had to become a Chunin. Genin were always so out of the loop. No one had ever told any of them about any of this. Maybe if they had known, they would have been more careful, and then Kakashi-sensei wouldn't be dying. No one told them this directly, of course, but Ino could read faces just as well as she could read minds. She believed it when the Hokage said that Kakashi-sensei was fine, though how fine she didn't know now, but from his face she knew that he hadn't been at one point, and that had been truly terrifying. Kakashi-sensei, the incorrigible, indestructible, unfazable, human embodiment of all things chaotic, in danger of just disappearing from life. So she said no? We're going to fight. Thank you, Hokage-sama. The Hokage gave them an odd little look, and then nodded. Very well. The best of luck to you three. And he ushered them back into the main room. Since Shikamaru had forfeited his right to participate as a result of his injury, he was technically supposed to leave while the rest of the team competed in the preliminary rounds. But after some interestingly executed manipulation and guilt-tripping of the Hokage, something which Ino was sure he had picked up from Kakashi-sensei, no, don't think about him now, he had been allowed to remain on the balcony as an observer. When they re-entered the room, the first fight had already begun. Ino didn't really bother to pay much attention. She had seen Neji spar before, though she had never gone head-to-head with him personally. Kiba, a brawler by nature, without much extra technique or tactical reasoning skills, couldn't hold a candle to him, even if Akamaru was there to help him. Strength could only do so much against speed and precision. The match ended in a matter of minutes. Ino watched almost uncaringly strange, because she wasn't normally this apathetic to other people, even if they weren't on her team, as Neji repeatedly hit Kiba and Akamaru in a series of tenketsu strikes, before finally delivering some scathing remarks and turning away. Kiba was forced to return to the balcony with his ego bruised, but Ino knew he wasn't the type to be emotionally devastated over a few words. By tomorrow he'd be back to normal. Ino, she jerked her head annoyed. Fine then. Don't talk to me. Oh, okay, Sakura shrugged, giving Ino a critical little look. Ino couldn't really bring herself to care. She didn't even bother to protest. She knew that compared to Sakura right now, she didn't look like much. Sakura's team had been one of the first to make it through, and they had run into almost zero trouble the entire way through. The whole thing would have been cake for a tracker genjutsu combo. It should have been cake for Team 7, too, Had they not had the bad luck to run into an insane missing Nin? Even after all that time resting at the base, she still felt completely exhausted and dirty. No one in their team had slept well in the past few days, and she could feel the rings underneath her eyes. The spare set of clothes she had brought with her were designed to be sturdy and inconspicuous, not aesthetically pleasing, and even though her hair was clean, it was still very tangled. She longed for some real shampoo and conditioner, but of course there was no time for that in the Chunin exams. Sakura seriously did look very nice. More confident. And happy with herself. A little annoyed with Lee, maybe, given the looks she kept throwing Guy's team at the other end of the balcony, but overall stronger and more self-assured than when she had left the academy. And she was clean and well-rested. Ino felt just the tiniest bit jealous. In the 6 months that they had been apart, she had unconsciously been picking up on their senseis. No, don't think about that right now, not exactly slobbish, but minimalist habits, without any other girls around her to compare herself to, and only Naruto and Shikamaru to impress, either of whom counted. Naruto was younger than she was in both age and maturity, and Shikamaru was her childhood friend/brother. She had simply let herself go. Maintaining her appearance was too troublesome given her daily activity, anyway. Yeah, it was probably this, huh? Ino asked. Baggy, plain brown and green pants and sweater. She probably could be confused for a drooping piece of moss, if she just closed her eyes and pressed herself tight up against the wall. Hardly the look which she had proudly carried in her academy days. No wonder she was unrecognizable to Sakura. Naruto's not orange anymore, Sakura said, trying to make some conversation. No, he isn't, Ino replied, not knowing what to say. Huh. That was odd. She could have sworn that just last week, she'd have been able to come up with 5 different conversation topics, 2 of them insults, and 1 an entire full-blown argument on the fly from that sentence alone. Sakura paused, probably expecting more. When she realized that Ino wasn't going to be saying much more than that, she tried again. You sure you're okay? Yeah, I'm sure. Sasuke-kun seems happier. Sasuke-kun, Sasuke-kun, Sasuke-kun. It was always all about him. Once upon a time, she would have hated Sakura for bringing it up. Once upon a time, they would have gotten into a little catfight over it, but now, she felt nothing. She only felt empty. Sasuke-kun seemed so negligible, so far away. Her team, her sensei, the people she'd spend the rest of her life dying for, they were the ones who really mattered, and yet she couldn't do a thing to help. That's nice. Sasuke-kun wasn't her teammate. Sasuke-kun wasn't dying, Sakura frowned. Look, pig, I know I told you I didn't want to be your friend anymore, but Kurenai-sensei told me as long as we have these headbands on, we're still fellow shinobi, yeah? Yeah, pig, I mean Ino, I'm fine. Honestly, Ino insisted. All right, said Sakura, deciding not to press any further. For which Ino was glad, until she picked an equally bad topic. So, where's your sensei? He's late. He always is, Ino tried. Well, that's not very responsible, is it? Ino glared at her, and Sakura scurried back a few steps. Maybe in any other situation, Ino would have felt bad for being mean to her, since it really wasn't Sakura's fault for not being there. But not now. Hiruzen Sarutobi, once again, was left feeling extremely guilty. It was his fault that Team 7 was even in this mess in the first place. It had been necessary, and yet he was unable to tell them the whole truth. He had to prevent their disillusionment. They were already torn up enough about Kakashi's predicament as it was, and another blow to their morale would only make things worse. Things like this had to be taken in slow bites. If ever. Now they were choosing to keep fighting, and what's more, they were fighting for Kakashi. The gods of irony must be rolling on the floor by now, he thought. The one person who doesn't want them to pass, and they're fighting for him. If any one of them got even a stubbed toe in this thing, Kakashi would have his head. Hiruzen eyed the youngest boy from Sand warily. He called Hate over, the one person who hadn't been changed out in the entire Chunin test proctor reshuffle. What can you do about that boy over there? He asked. Hate turned to look. That one? He asked. Yes. Him. I don't want him fighting here. Mentally unstable Jinchuriki. He didn't want him fighting any of Konoha's children, period. To hell with this replacement for war pretense. Get rid of the rest of the Sand team, too. They should have gone to Ibiki. Yes, sir, said Hate. He straightened, coughed twice, and then announced, due to the lack of diversity in our final brackets, the entire team from the Hidden Sand is automatically granted a buy-in to the final rounds. Congratulations, you will not have to fight here. Please leave the area and return to your home base. The smallest boy looked very angry, But he always looked angry, so the Sandaime didn't care. The Sanjonin Baki nodded and herded the Kazekage's children down the stairs. Or former Kazekage. His intelligence scouts had reported back to him that the Kazekage had been murdered, probably by Orochimaru, and that the director of the invasion force had been handed down to the next most senior Sunanin in the area, that is, Baki. Though Baki didn't know it, the Sandaime Hokage was already planning the conversation that they would soon be having. Because, really, there was no way that either of them were going to be leaving this thing without entering some sort of negotiation round. Preferably one that would end massively in Konoha's favor. Hiruzen was normally not a big fan of Danzo's policies, but in this case, he really did want to see Tsunagakure suffer. Seeing as Orochimaru was already dead and all, Danzo. Why did he even keep the guy around? Because you let him do your dirty work instead of doing it yourself. Because you're a coward. Because you would have a willing scapegoat. Because he's still useful to you, and you take advantage of him more than he takes advantage of you, and you're surprised he wants the hat that would finally give him positive recognition for everything he's done in your stead? Shut up, he snapped at the little voice in his head. Go away. He could still see the badly fitting curse mark murdering Kakashi every time he closed his eyes. It just wouldn't leave. Hiruzen had lived a long life and seen many horrors, but it was this particular memory that refused to scrub itself away for some reason. Maybe because it was a combination of both Kakashi and Orochimaru, two young men he had failed twice over. He looked back down at the Sand team, the young and nervous Baki, carrying the mistakes of his predecessors on his shoulders, the Jinchuriki with the terrible seal, who Naruto could have so easily turned out to be, had people like Iraka Yumino not taken responsibility over him, and for what seemed to be like the millionth time in the past month, he sighed. This was going to be a long day. Hate was getting a little bored. The last fight hadn't been much to watch. Neji Hyuga vs Kiba Inazaka had basically consisted of the older boy whacking around his opponent, and a dog, until they collapsed to the ground. Watching the martial arts was cool, but there was very little strategy to be had. The obligatory pre-match trash talk hadn't been particularly creative, either, so Hate was hoping that this one would be mildly entertaining, at least, and it kind of was. I know, Chan. Let us make this a most youthful fight, if loud. I am sorry, I know, Chan, but my romantic feelings for you exist no longer. I am now Sakura-chan's most worthy and youthful suitor. Fear not, however, for you are still most beautiful and youthful, and we certainly shall remain the best of friends. Ino wanted to crawl into a corner and die. Sakura had this weird look on her face, and Ino turned away. She did not want to have to explain this awkwardness. Start! Hate announced. The first thing Ino noticed, when fighting Lee, was that it was easier than she expected. She had seen Lee and Naruto spar before, and she knew that Lee hit hard. Of course, this was the first time she had personally fought with Lee, because that one time they'd had Gai-sensei training time, she had always made excuses to try to get partnered up with Tenten, who was the least messed up of the lot. Even so, she knew that Lee was holding back. Very obviously, her first instinct was to demand that he treat her like an equal, instead of that one girl he used to have a borderline obsessive crush on. She didn't know why she was so angry, she just was. She just couldn't take it anymore, this treading on glass behavior around her. She needed a good fight, something, anything to distract her from everything that was going on right now. However, if there was one life lesson she remembered from Kakashi-sensei, he's okay, it was, be smart, not dumb. That, and if you're going to be dumb, be smart about it. Lee was a very nice kid. Lee was also a very dumb kid, and if he was dumb enough to be nice to her in a fight, then he deserved the consequences, like her taking advantage of that niceness to punch him in the face. Lee! What do you think you're doing? Tenten demanded. I am sorry, Tenten, Lee yelled, nursing his bloody nose, but Gai-sensei always taught me that it is most unyouthful to strike a fair maiden. It's also unyouthful to not take your opponent seriously, you nitwit. Tenten screamed back. Crap, crap, crap. If Lee starts fighting properly, then I'm screwed. Shut up, Tenten. Let him do what he wants. Don't listen to her, Lee. Fraternizing with the enemy is considered treason. But Tenten, she is right, my most youthful student. Gai-sensei called down. Just because she is a fair maiden does not mean she is not also a skilled student of your sensei's eternal rival. Lee sat up, face all bloody from her strike, and flashed her a bright smile and a thumbs up. Very well. I shall fight with all the strength of my youth. Konoha's great green beast in training shall advance with all the fervor of. What the hell is wrong with your team? Ino asked. Tenten shrugged. That was all she got, before Lee disappeared in a blur of green. Holy shit, he's fast, Ino thought, as she barely blocked another kick from Lee. But as long as I'm here, I might as well fight to the best of my ability, too. She would not lose to Lee, not here. Lee was a very good fighter, and he was definitely stronger and faster than she was. There was no way she could match him in either raw muscle or speed. So, Ino did the next best thing. She ran. Wait. But my lovely Ino-chan, where are you going? But Ino didn't just run. What she lacked in raw power, she could make up for in other ways. For one, intelligence. She was not Shikamaru, but compared to Lee, who was a genius of hard work and pretty much nothing else, she could manage. More importantly, she could use ninjutsu and genjutsu. And Lee could not. Sucker. Yeah, it was cheap of her to take advantage of Lee in that way, but she was a shinobi. It was practically a given that you didn't fight fair. And in all honesty, it would be pretty embarrassing if she didn't take advantage of such a glaring flaw when she saw it. An enemy shinobi wasn't going to refrain from using ninjutsu and genjutsu just because Lee couldn't. Ino knew that her knowledge of genjutsu was rather limited. She had been more focused on shaping her elemental ninjutsu and her mind arts training with her father. But the few she did know were infinitely more than Lee, who knew zero. And in this manner, as long as she was always one step ahead, she'd be able to beat Lee. The one she selected was simple enough, a minor disorienting genjutsu that reversed the victim's perceptions of depth and direction. It was not very chakra-intensive, and in all honesty it would be easy enough for even Lee to break the Kai command did not require any actual shaping of chakra, after a few seconds. But Ino could use that to her advantage, because every time this particular genjutsu was reapplied, depth and direction were altered in a different way. Meaning, every time Lee broke through the genjutsu, she could simply reapply it over and over again until he keeled over from dizziness. His speed and strength meant nothing if he was facing the wrong direction. Of course, Ino knew that if he ever managed to get out of her genjutsu, one hit would probably end her. So she just kept spamming her illusions while Lee was down. Crude, but effective. Just like Naruto's army of clones. Eventually, he'd fall over, and then she'd be able to take him down with a minor fire jutsu from a distance. Nothing too dangerous, just enough to knock him out, but not enough to cause any permanent scars or heavy burning. Lee! Guy-sensei suddenly yelled. Take them off. Lee paused, and then asked, still facing in the wrong direction, now Guy-sensei? Yes. Guy-sensei bellowed. Now, Lee's face broke out into a wide grin. Yes, sir. He stopped everything that he was doing and reached down to his shins to peel off his leg warmers. Whatever he was doing, it was taking forever. Are you serious? Ino thought. Oh, you have got to be kidding me. And she hit him point blank in the face with her blasting jutsu. That was most unyouthful, Ino-chan, Lee moaned, and rolled over, unconscious, his massive eyebrows and ash-blackened face still smoking comically. Winner, Ino, Hate declared. Guy-sensei shook his head disappointedly. But I would have expected nothing less from an honored student of my eternal rival. Ino couldn't help but grin as the man jumped down from the railing to wake Lee up and lead him back to the balcony. And that is why, Lee, you must always be most vigilant at all times. Letting your guard down as you prepare your attacks is most unyouthful. Do you understand? Yes. I understand. Thank you, Gi-sensei. Lee, Gi-sensei. Lee, Gi-sensei. Lee, Gi-sensei. Where the hell do all those rainbows even come from? Tenten groaned. You're asking me? Ino replied. I take it you're feeling better? Shikamaru smiled at her from where he was sitting on the ground. Ino smiled back. Oh loads, bonus number 11. In an alternate universe, Lee! Guy-sensei suddenly yelled. Take them off. Lee paused, and then asked, still facing in the wrong direction, now Guy-sensei? Yes. Guy-sensei bellowed. Now, take what off? Lee's face broke out into a wide grin. Yes, sir. He stopped everything that he was doing and reached down to his shins, too. Oh God, he's taking off his leg warmers. What else is he going to take off? Oh no. No. I am not watching that. Secret ninja art. Wait, Ino, it's not that, it's just the weights, Tenten yelled. But it was too late. Katon, kill it with fire. Chapter 18, of Onions and Tears. The Chunin Exam Preliminaries. Next up, Hinata Hyuga. Hinata gulped, versus Tenten. Please come down to the front. Nervously, she descended the steps. Hinata did not want to disappoint. She already got enough hell from her father for being a failure at home. When they were attacked by the snake in the maze, she had to wait for Team 7 to come and save her. Sasuke, her own teammate, treated her like dead weight, justified, in that she really didn't do anything that useful most of the time. Asuma-sensei and Choji were at a loss at how to deal with her, too. Oh, they never said anything, but she could tell. Every time they told her to try harder, that just meant she was weak. And she didn't even want to think of Naruto, who wouldn't even notice her back in the academy, seeing her lose here. All her life she had been regarded as powerless, so much that even she felt like believing it. Hinata couldn't understand why it was her, and just her, who could never seem to go anywhere in life. All the people here seemed to be so strong, even the other girls and the rest of the rookies, so she had no excuse there. Neji had been cruel to his opponent during their fight, but there was no doubt that he was good at what he did. He had easily run circles around Kiba, and Hinata knew that Kiba was stronger than she was. And then Ino had managed to defeat Lee, and Hinata had seen Lee fight Sasuke before the exams. Lee had wiped the floor with him, and Sasuke could wipe the floor with her. Of course, Hinata didn't know if Ino could beat Lee in a taijutsu-only fight, or if Lee could have finished off her teammate if he had been unwilling to use fire jutsu indoors. He was strangely considerate in certain regards, and not setting wooden buildings on fire with his breath was one of them. But the point was, she had beaten him, and that was all that mattered. Ino would be advancing to the finals, and Lee would not. Sakura hadn't fought yet, but if her team had made it here so early then she must have been strong as well. And then Tenten, standing in front of her. She was Neji's teammate, and she didn't seem like she was going to give in, either, just because Hinata was younger and less experienced. On the contrary, Tenten looked like she was going to use it to her advantage, and maybe even make it worse for her, because she had probably already known Neji for a while, and she would know that he was a strong person to be taken seriously. Maybe she would regard Hinata with the same wariness, something that Hinata didn't really deserve. She knew she would never catch up to Neji. Nonetheless, she had to try. Although, admittedly, she didn't try very hard. After the first few strikes, it was clear that she couldn't beat Tenten. Tenten was stronger and faster than she was, and besides, she was used to defending against the gentle fist. She was Neji's teammate, thus she had probably sparred with Neji many times in the past. She knew all the standard points Hinata was taught to strike. She knew all the counters to the various stances. Most importantly, she understood that the gentle fist was a short-range collection of techniques. Every single time Hinata saw an opening and went for it, Tenten would just move backwards, out of the way. And then, when she got too far away for Hinata to reach, she started throwing her weapons, and all of a sudden Hinata was on the defensive, trying to dodge and slap away the barrage of kunai and shuriken raining down upon her. Tenten had amazing skill in judging distances, probably as a result of her extensive weapons training. She knew exactly where to stand to optimize her own range of damage while at the same time just barely staying out of Hinata's way. It was the part that Hinata had always had the most trouble with, getting close to people. When others dodged, and she couldn't reach, she was admonished for not being skilled enough to strike them down. And when she tried to defend herself by getting out of range instead of blocking, which was very highly logical in her opinion, she was admonished again, for being cowardly, for being too passive, for being lazy, for not attacking. No matter what she did, she was never good enough. She couldn't do it. Her father was right. Neji was right. And even though Sasuke never said it out loud, he was right every time he looked at her with those condescending eyes. He wasn't looking at her like that right now, but she was sure he was still judging her. She was weak. She was a loser. As she fell, she looked up and caught a glimpse of Naruto. Only, he wasn't even looking at her. He and Ino and Shikamaru had their heads bowed together. They were sitting in their own little circle, talking about something. Maybe it was her. They were talking about how quick and pathetic that fight had been, how she was such a loser. Or maybe they didn't even regard her as important enough to discuss. They were talking to each other, not even sparing her a glance. She wasn't important enough to join their private little circle. They were in their own little world. Ino and Naruto seemed more serious now, with their dark clothes and solemn faces and determined eyes. But there was still that tiniest spark of cheery self-confidence and mischief present around Naruto, for which she was glad. It seemed less pronounced than before, however, and that was what made Hinata worry. She didn't want to see him lose that spark altogether. Naruto would no longer be himself if that happened. Sasuke had improved in leaps and bounds under Asuma-sensei's tutelage. Choji, too, was advancing extremely quickly. His family's special jutsu made him stronger than most people could dream of being. Kiba had lost to Neji, but he was so much stronger and faster than when she had seen him last. Sakura and Shino hadn't fought yet, but from the way they carried themselves, they seemed so much better than she was. Something had happened between their graduation and now, but they had all changed so much. Everyone except her. Hinata was still stuck in the same little rut she had always been in, and nothing she ever did was going to get her out of that. Tenten winner, I can't do it. I'm a failure. She tried to hold back the tears in her eyes as she ascended the stairs again. Everyone was quietly staring at her. Staring at her and judging her, just like her father did. Neji, with that look of disgust. The others, with their looks of pity. No one talked to her. No one said anything to her. No one except for the person she had just fought. Hey! Hinata, right? Can I talk to you? Outside? Hinata looked up. Tenten was in front of her face. Over to the side, Neji was still glaring at her. What is she going to do? Mock me? Make fun of me? Rub it in my face? I deserve it. That match really was pathetic. The next fight had begun. Sakura Haruno had been called up to face Sasuke Uchiha. Hinata felt really bad for her. If she had been put in the same situation, she didn't think she'd be able to even lift a finger to fight Naruto. At least with Tenten she had tried. A little, but as soon as Hayate-san had given the start signal, Sakura had bravely jumped into the fray, and was now resisting with all her might. The way she looked at Sasuke, you could tell that she still admired him, but that didn't mean she was just going to bend over and hand him the spot in the finals. Hinata wished she could be like Sakura. You've gotten better. If only Naruto-kun would acknowledge her like that. I'm a ninja too, Sasuke. Outside of these exams are a different story, but while we're here. Sasuke smirked at her, and Sakura smiled back at him, before pulling out a kunai and charging. Watch me, Kurenai-sensei. I'll make you proud. She was so brave. Even if she lost here, she would still be so brave in Hinata's eyes. Sasuke was a very strong ninja. Being able to stand up for him as long as Sakura had already was a feat that Hinata could only ever dream of. Sure? Hinata really didn't want to miss the fight, but Tenten looked impatient. Almost immediately after they had left the room, Tenten cornered her. Hinata bit back a shriek, hoping that Tenten wasn't here to finish what she had started. Why'd you let me win? Tenten demanded. What? Why'd you let me win? She asked again. You're Neji's cousin? There's no way you should have lost so easily. Hinata let her head drop. But I'm not Neji. Doesn't matter, Tenten snapped. I know you were holding back there. All of your hits were pretty much on point. You dodged all of my weapons and you smacked them away all perfectly. You weren't making any mistakes. I was about to pull out my twin dragon scrolls on you, actually, and then you just let your arms drop to your sides, and you took that hammer right to the head. You didn't even try to block it. Tenten was angry at her for losing. That was another person to add to the list, she supposed. I mean, Lee was taking Ino seriously during their fight. Why didn't you take me seriously? If you had tried to block and missed, or turned the wrong way, I might have believed you, but you didn't even mess up once. Not once. You just quit. Tenten was still ranting at her. Why? You didn't even try to fight. You just tossed the victory right into my lap. Not that I don't appreciate you saving me the trouble, but why would you do that? Am I not good enough for you to take seriously? Why? I'm sorry. I know I'm weak, Hinata mumbled an apology, more out of habit than anything else. What are you talking about? Tenten asked. Hey, are you even listening to me? Yes. Tenten put her hands on her hips and glared at her. Hinata shrunk in apology. The older girl had won, but she still hated her for it. I can't even lose properly. For God's sake, don't pull that crap on me, girl. I know you're not weak. Why are you pretending that you are? Is there some reason you don't want to advance? I want to know, Tenten pressed. I'm sorry, wait, what? Tenten raised an eyebrow. For what? I'm not asking you to say sorry. I just want to know why you did what you did back there. I didn't hear you, Hinata said quickly. What did you say before? I want to know why you let me win. No, I mean, before that. You mean that stuff about pretending you're weak? There was a loud cheer, and Hayate-san's voice called, Sasuke Uchiha, winner. She heard everyone clapping. For both Sasuke and Sakura. They had admired her fight, too. Not like her. She was boring. No one paid any attention to her. Ah man, that was a really good fight. She heard Lee exclaim. Yeah, Sakura-chan sure gave Sasuke team a run for his money. Naruto said. Choji agreed with him. She was actually really good. Too bad she got Sasuke for her opponent though. If it had been anyone else, her genjutsu would have kicked their butt. Yeah, the Sharingan really isn't fair, is it? Next match. Haite-san called. Choji Akimichi vs Naruto Uzumaki. This means that Shino Aburame will be getting a bye this round. We will see you in the finals, Shino. Congratulations. Hinata! Pay attention when I'm talking to you, Tenten said, snapping her fingers around Hinata's head. Why are you pretending you're weak? Hinata sighed in defeat. I'm not pretending, Tenten. I just am. Please let me go back inside. But the older girl blocked her way, slamming her palm against the wall before Hinata could worm around her. Is that really it? You really do think you're that weak? That's why you gave up? Not because you were going easy on me or something? Hinata nodded shamefully. Tenten snorted. Well, if that's the case, then that's sadder than a depressed onion cutting itself. Hinata felt the tears build up in her eyes. I know. Are you crying? Tenten stared at her. Oh God, you're crying. You're seriously crying. I'm sorry, Hinata whispered. No! Stop apologizing, damn it! That wasn't supposed to be an insult. That was supposed to be a joke. It was supposed to be funny. Tenten grabbed her head and groaned dramatically. Come on! I worked so hard on that line. A depressed onion cutting itself, don't you see how that's so many layers of funny? Do you know how long I've been wanting to say that? Of my 3 teammates, 2 of them are demented, oversized frogs, and one of them wouldn't know what a sense of humor was if it danced in front of him in a bikini seashell swimsuit. Well, that was a creative way to refer to her cousin. Tenten continued to gesticulate wildly. And here I am, finally meeting someone who might appreciate that humor, and I end up making her cry instead. I'm cursed. I must be cursed. That, Hinata had no idea how to respond to that, but she no longer felt like crying, that was for sure. She opted for an incredulous stare instead. Tenten shook her head. Why the heck are you even here, Hinata? Before Hinata could answer, they were interrupted with Naruto's scream of Futon, wind cyclone. There was a ripple in the air, and suddenly, the entire building was trembling in its foundations as the force of Naruto's ninjutsu ripped it apart from the inside. From the crack in the door, Hinata could see everyone on the balconies holding on for dear life before they got blown away into the wall. Multi-size jutsu, shadow clones, assemble! Wind style, giant wind scythe. It took all of Hinata's will to tear her eyes away from the fight back to Tenten. Well? Tenten asked, prodding her in the chest. Why the heck are you even here? To her mortification, she had no response to that. I don't know. How about an easier question then? Why do you want to become a shinobi? I don't know either, she confessed. I'm sorry. No, you're not, Hinata. You're a shinobi for a reason. So stop thinking you're so weak. If you really were that way, they wouldn't have given you the Hittite in the first place. Tenten flicked the metal on her forehead protector, to make her point. We all have a purpose, Hinata. You're just having trouble finding yours. Winner, Naruto Uzumaki. And this concludes our rounds. Winners of previous rounds, please make your way down to the floor. Tenten turned away to heed the call, but not before she craned her neck back at Hinata and said, You are strong, Hinata. You just have no direction. Go home and think about it, Hinata, and don't start training again until you can answer this question truthfully. What the heck are you fighting for? Hinata watched her leave, but not really. Her mind was still stuck on everything Tenten had said to her. Someone thinks I'm strong? UDC, Underground Detainment Complex, Interrogation Wing, Cell Number 19, Kabuto Yakushi. So you're not directly affiliated with Sand. You're affiliated with Orochimaru, who is working with Sand. Is this correct? There was a whimper, and Ibiki rolled his eyes. He signaled to one of the other interrogators in the room, who held up a pair of rounded glasses in front of their restrained victim. In his other hand, he had a tiny screwdriver. Slowly, he began to work at the little knob on the arms. The frame started to pop open, and the lens came loose. The victim leaned forward in the chair, screaming, and oh! Don't answer my question, or else we will take apart this thing and grind it down to sand before your eyes. Are you working with Orochimaru? Yes, now please stop, please. Ibiki ignored him, and continued barraging him with questions. The pair of glasses remained loose, but so far undamaged. And you say that as long as you have some DNA, you can revive them, and that this DNA has been hidden within all of Orochimaru's victims, but that most of the samples are in his secret base in Sound, Ibiki confirmed, ignoring his pleas. And it went on like that. Every time the prisoner looked like he was about to balk, his precious glasses came under scrutiny. It was interesting to Ibiki, the sorts of things that mattered to people. Shinobi were trained so very well in resisting physical pain. Their psyches, on the other hand, were less well protected. All of this, it was all in his head. The glasses themselves had little value other than an optical tool, and he could easily get himself new ones, better ones. Their sentimental value, however, was something the boy could not seem to let go of. This was fully understandable to Ibiki. Objects were powerful because of the human brain's ability to associate them with more powerful, meaningful memories. He was not a completely unsympathetic person, as many other torturers, interrogators, were. Rather, he understood all too well. It was this ability to pick out just exactly what people cared about, and not just the fact that he held nearly no guilt over using those things against them, that made him such a successful interrogator. Yes. Yes, that's right. Please stop it. Ibiki sighed, and finally decided to acquiesce to his request. Nono-san would have been proud of you, whoever you are at the moment. You know she still loved you very much. She would have died for you. Kabuto was sobbing. But I don't know who I am, and now you'll never know, Ibiki thought, semi-sadly, but not really, because the kid, while being just that, nothing more than a misguided, lost little kid, was still an enemy of Konoha, and therefore he had to be eliminated. Even more so, because of his vast and highly dangerous medical knowledge. It wouldn't do spend so much time finding and killing someone, only to have them revived like nothing had ever happened. Now, Ibiki was very aware that Orochimaru most likely had some other secret plans that didn't completely rely on his latest victim, but from the intelligence he had gathered from all the sound people they had rounded up, it seemed like Kabuto was still one of the more important ones. Without Kabuto, Orochimaru would definitely have a much harder time trying to come back to life. And every single backup they thwarted was another second they bought. In the world of shinobi, 1 second was a lot of time. 1 second was the difference between life or death. 1 death was the difference between victory or defeat. Dispatch Team 2. Over. Affirmative. And bring a chemical waste disposal team down here with you, too. Sodium hydroxide is a bitch to clean up. Yes, sir. Ibiki then stoically watched as Kabuto's dead body was taken away to the incinerator, while the entire area was scrubbed down for any traces of himself he might have left behind. Strong acids and bases did wonders to breaking down DNA. Good luck cloning this guy back to life, now. Need someone deleted off the face of the earth? Just contact Konoha ANBUTNI. Only one of many services we offer. The boy had been well trained, that was for sure. As expected of a former Konoha root ANBU now disguised as a hapless genin. He hadn't cracked even a tiny bit for the first few hours Ibiki had had him. It was only when he brought up his deceased mother figure that Kabuto had finally snapped, and quite spectacularly, too. Sometimes, it was the little memories you had to watch out for. He'd have to thank Inoichi later for managing to scrounge up that data on the orphanage that Kabuto had come from. Inoichi never told him where he got it, though. Oh well. He wasn't going to ask. As long as his methods worked, he didn't care how they were implemented. There were a lot of blind eyes turned in their world. Ibiki had several himself. Inoichi Yamanaka had his agenda. It lined up with Ibiki Marino's. Therefore it followed that Ibiki Marino and Inoichi Yamanaka would work together. Simple as that. The Yamanaka clan compound. Oh God, Inoichi whispered. If Danzo ever finds out, he's going to kill me. Don't let him find out then, said Shikaku. He's already trying to kill us, isn't he? One more slight against him isn't going to change his mind. Unless you were monumentally careless in your snooping, in which case you would have already killed yourself like they taught you in ANBU, to prevent the information from being tortured out of you. You should really stop pulling out your own hair, because that's not going to help Ino or Shikamaru. Or their teammates and friends. But do you know what they made them do? Inoichi asked, voice rising, and Shikaka had to stand up to calm him down before something bad happened. You never knew what privacy seals might malfunction at the exact inopportune time. What they probably still make them do. No, but seeing your freaked out reaction, I'm pretty glad I don't. And I'm very glad Shikamaru doesn't know either, Shikaka said, mind racing at just what exactly could make his friend, a man who often worked alongside Ibiki Marino because of his specialty, lose his composure like so. Oh, Inoichi tended to get emotional a lot. He'd once gone into overdrive when Ino was 2 and was first learning how to walk, and fall over, but those cases were always superficial. Silly, just like their causes. This meltdown, however, this was serious. An emotional Inoichi was an unstable one, and an unstable Inoichi was a dangerous one. I should have never let them take full way. I should have just spat in his face and taken the consequences. I should have. Inoichi shook his head. I changed my mind. I don't think we should kill Danzo. No, death is too kind for that bastard, Shikaku. I'm not going to fight him. I want to make him suffer, or we could not. But do go on, Shikaku muttered, but Inoichi wasn't listening. You know that eternal genin guy Kabuto? We had to kill him today. I was having so much fun running betting pools with the other Jonin on just how long he was going to take to finally make Chunin, and now that will never happen because we had to kill him. We had to kill him, because of Danzo, because of Orochimaru, because of all these shitty chess players playing shitty chess with the lives of other people. Shikaku sighed. You're talking to one of those chess players, Inoichi. Yes, I know, but you're not a shitty chess player, and that makes all the difference. Does it? No, not really. No, for all they did to fight those men, they weren't so different themselves. Sometimes, Shikaku wondered why he and Danzo Shimura hated each other so much. In another world, they might have even gotten along, and yet, Shikaku still fought for his own side. It was a simple matter of interest, after all, and the methods, no matter how similar, wouldn't matter if the interests didn't coincide. But maybe that was why they hated each other. After all, men tended to hate those who were most like themselves, for they were a reflection of their own faults. Shikaku blamed Danzo for a lot of things, but if he was going to be truthful with himself, he would have done the same, if it meant keeping his family alive. As for Danzo Shimura, well, he worked for the greater good of Konoha. Except that, he neglected to consider the people in Konoha as a part of it. And then there was the Sandaime, who needed both the clans and Danzo around. The Sandaime was the biggest obstacle to their elimination of Danzo, no matter how much he pretended otherwise. To make a move against Danzo was to go against the Hokage, and that would not do, because, well, treason. For all his faults, there were few others in the village more fit for the position than Hiruzen Sarutobi. Were the Sandaime to step down right now, it would be a toss-up as to whether the next one would befriend the clans or be Danzo himself. The three of them really weren't so different. Except for, of course, the whole deal with the child soldiers. This was the one thing that separated them, the one thing they used as an excuse to put themselves on a pedestal higher than his and rain judgment down on everyone else below. And when you thought about it in that way, it was pretty damn funny, to be honest. The Chunin exam preliminaries. Because the final round will be in a single elimination bracket format, we need 8 people. 6 of you are currently here. That means 2 of you who lost in the preliminaries will actually get to compete in the final rounds anyway. Based on your performances, as well as the performances of those you went up against, Sakura Haruno and Rock Lee, please join the winners on the floor. YOSH. The power of youth has prevailed. Watch me, Gi-sensei. I shall perform with all the vigor of youth, and— Wait, Shikamaru tried to ask, what about the Sand Kids? There were 3 of them. For the final rounds, Hate announced over Lee, you will be drawing numbered slips of paper from a hat to randomly decide who you will go up against in the finals. 1 month from now. Naruto drew an 8. He groaned. Ugh. Last again, then Neji. 2, Tenten 7, Ino 3, Lee 6, Sakura 1, Sasuke 5, which left Shino with 4. Excellent, Hate announced. The final matches will be as follows: Sakura Haruno vs Neji Hyuga. For match 1, Ino Yamanaka vs Shino Aburame. For match 2, Sasuke Uchiha vs Rock Lee. For match 3, and Tenten vs Naruto Uzumaki. For match 4. You are dismissed to all of your respective sensei until further notice. Wait, what about the Sand guys? Naruto asked. Don't worry about them, Hate said. Will they be competing though? Like I said, don't worry about them. Ino, though, wasn't really thinking about any of that. Her mind had stopped at Ino Yamanaka vs Shino Aburame. Shino Aburame, as in the bugs guy. Bugs, insects, Kikeichu, beetle things that could suck your chakra dry. All the way home, that was all she could think of. That and Kakashi-sensei, she screamed. Chapter 19. A most dignified robbery. The Nara clan compound. I wasn't sure how many hours I had spent just lying in bed, staring at the ceiling. Too many. That was for sure. I felt like I was missing out on something important. It wasn't just the fact that I wasn't allowed to train. I had been prepared for that unfortunate necessity. Every shinobi and their mother knew trying to overexert a chakra network while it was still in recovery mode just meant confining oneself to a longer recovery period. There were many other productive ways I could spend my time aside from training. Like digging up information, unless no information was coming up. Like now, I had no answers, just more questions. It wasn't the matter of the foreign villages. That was easy enough to deduce. Orochimaru wasn't the type to share power so readily. His subordinates were probably falling apart quickly without him around. Sunigekyo would still stand, because invading a desert just for revenge was absolute idiocy. but they would experience a severe drop in power, relegated to the same corner Kirigakure was in. At least temporarily. Both Suna and Kiri were still dangerous, and even more so if they were in a position for people to forget about them. That was the point of being a ninja, to be so invisible that you became forgotten, and then strike when people least expected it. I didn't know exactly what would happen to the genin dismissed from the exams, but I'd find out soon enough, seeing as the same thing would probably happen to every Sannin still in Konoha. Meanwhile, a power triangle would form between the remaining 3 of the 5 major ninja villages then. Iwa, Kumo, and Konoha. Within those 3, the relationships just got more complicated. Iwa and Konoha hated each other. Konoha could not trust Kumo. Iwa and Kumo might form some secret alliance against Konoha, or they might not because no one really trusted Kumo. If the Sandaime didn't play his cards right and somehow ruin any potential alliances between Kumo and Iwa, we might very well be fighting a two-front war sometime in the near future, but I didn't care about that. It was obvious that all the various ninja villages hated each other, what with the ever-present scramble for more wealth and power. Konoha herself would be fine. She was the first to stand and she would be the last to fall. I was not worried about Konoha. I was worried about the people in it. Because here, my opponents were not so easily visible. Secret plotters disguised as comrades, harmful orders under the veil of service, dangerous positions hidden behind a mask of prestige and honor. This was what we were supposed to trust blindly, what we were supposed to die for. It was as if the village and the people running it were 2 separate entities. What was Konoha even? Who was really in charge? What intentions did they have for my friends, for me? Perhaps everyday ninja could just stand around doing their work, closing their eyes and ears to everything that was above their clearance level. But I certainly couldn't. That was always my greatest weakness. I always had to know everything. I'd go mad if I was stuck knowing that there was something I didn't know. Some could argue that this was insubordination, this questioning of orders. But what sort of ninja would I be if I didn't look out for myself? Shinobi rule number I don't care, know your mission. Not just the task, but the reasoning, the background, and the justification behind it as well. If there was no time for them to explain at the moment, say, in an emergency, where orders had to be given and executed quickly, then fine. But I would expect an explanation after it was all over. This was a simple matter of survival. One day, the orders would become more difficult, more dangerous, and then where would I be? It was unreasonable for them to expect such sacrifices from me, without giving me proper payment in return. This wasn't the same as a field mission, where information was withheld so captured operatives wouldn't succumb to foreign interrogators. This was my own village, and I didn't even know if my sensei was dead or alive. My thoughts were interrupted by my father's shadow falling across the room. It's 2 a.m, Shikamaru. Of course he would notice I was awake. I can't sleep, I whined. My dad groaned. You know your mother told you to go to bed hours ago. I am in bed. Bed implies sleep, my father grumbled. Don't you like ignoring her orders, though? I grinned. He laughed. Not when it involves her giving me permission to sleep. Dad, I asked, all pretense gone, what was the real reason for entering all the rookies into the exams? My father immediately frowned. Go to sleep, Shikamaru. I was furious. We nearly got killed because of this. Don't they owe me an explanation? But the anger disappeared as quickly as it came, replaced with something darker and uglier. No, they don't. The world owes you nothing. You cannot imagine how crushing this realization was for me. How helpless and insignificant I was in the grand scheme of things. It is one thing to lose a fight, because one can always train to get stronger. It is another thing entirely, to suddenly recognize the awful truth of just how little control one has over his own life, no matter how strong he becomes. Are you angry, Shikamaru? My father asked, staring straight at me. I was angry, but he used the present tense, so I just truthfully shook my head at him. He looked at me a little while longer, and then he turned out the light and left. And again, I was left in the dark. Lucky, then, that I did not fear the shadows. I would not give up so easily. It was true that learning how to spit fire would bring me no closer to my goal than I was now. But there were other forms of power besides muscle and jutsu, and just because I had none of it now didn't mean things would remain that way. All of it, of course, was for the safety of the people I cared about. Or so I told myself. The Sunigake your temporary base. You can't do this, Baki. Temari yelled. You can't just give him away like that. I can, and I will, Baki sighed tiredly, having come back from an extremely exhausting meeting with the Sandaime Hokage and not really wanting to argue with yet another person. Better one person than an entire village. Baki was a shinobi, not a debater, He followed orders, not questioned them. Temari was much better than he was in that regard, being a teenage girl who had also happened to grow up under the watchful eye of the whole Sunagakure Council. For all his faults, the former Kazekage had really cared about his children. Well, one could make a case against Gaara, but he had been a reasonable enough father to the other two, and he had allowed her, as the eldest, to act as the head of household while he was gone. Forceful personality, semi-manipulative at the best of times, and often presented a cool and careless front. Typical oldest sibling behavior. All his life, he's been a sacrifice, Temari argued. You're just going to hand him over like that? Not even without a fight? You didn't even care if he lived or died yesterday. They'd crush us otherwise, Baki explained. They knew about this invasion the whole time, Temari. They purposely let us come here with the intention of pulling something like this. Tell me, Temari, what was I supposed to do? Their Hokage practically demanded Gaara as a hostage. I was in no position to refuse. Couldn't we still fight? We're prepared. We can still deal lots of damage. She was young. She didn't understand. Baki didn't know how to make her understand. It was hard, admitting your own weakness. Especially in front of your former Kazekage's daughter. Every one of the 5 great hidden villages taught their children that their village alone stood out as the greatest and strongest. For a while that had been acceptable because they were all supposed to be around equal in terms of industrial power and military strength. But times were changing. Loyalties were shifting, power plays were upsetting the balance, and the sand was on the losing side. If only their Sandaime Kazekage was still alive, he'd be able to match old Sarutobi. Not like him. Baki knew his own shortcomings. He was a skilled ninja, but he was never Kage material. Baki was not a heartless man. He would, under no circumstances, send anyone out on a suicide mission. He would accept one, if his leaders gave the order. But he was the leader now, and his style was much different from that of his predecessors. Gone were the days of ruthless politicking. Baki had been out in the field himself numerous times and knew how terrible it could be for those actually executing the plans. He would not suffer someone else to the same fates he had already experienced. Barely survived. One of their missing nin managed to murder the most powerful man in our village. Now one of their men has managed to defeat Orochimaru. They outnumber us greatly, and while individually their men are weaker than ours, they know how to gang up on the enemy like wolves. Even if we manage to hurt them, we will come out of this with dead men too. Sheesh, Kankuro rolled his eyes, less sympathetic than his sister. On one hand, that made Baki a little relieved that he wouldn't have to argue with 2 people at once. On the other hand, he was a little disappointed in Kankuro for not being more loving towards his younger brother, even if it was justified. Why do you even care so much about the guy, Temari? Remember all the times he threatened to kill us? Temari turned on him. He's our brother. Messed up or not, he's still. Look, I understand your reasoning, and Gaara isn't my favorite person in the world either, but he's still a person. Look, Temari, at this point in time, we haven't done such a great job caring for Gaara either, Baki said softly. His chances at a happy life were ruined the moment the demon was sealed into him. At least here, the Leaf promised to have their best sealing workers and mind specialists take a look at him. I don't know what sort of things they'll do to him, but he won't be losing control anymore. That I can assure you. He won't be losing control anymore? Of course he won't. They'll kill him, take the bijou, and seal it into another one of their own if he does. Temari yelled. You're just as bad as our father. Only you're letting a foreign village execute him instead of just giving the order yourself, you great big coward. Maybe Kankuro doesn't remember, because he was too young when Gaara was taken away from us. But I still know the real Gaara, before he went crazy after one too many murder attempts. He was a good kid. They'll turn him into a weapon, Baki. They'll turn him into a weapon, and they'll use him against us. Why can't you keep him? Ask them to trade something else. Money, or jutsu, or something. Gaara isn't useless to us, Baki. One day we'll need him. We'll need the power of a Jinchuriki. And then you'll be sorry, when the Leaf has 2 and we have none. Temari had a point there. But what purpose did her argument serve, if it could not be realistically carried out? Baki would have tried his best to keep Gaara, had he been able to. But the reason why they were in this situation in the first place was because they were in no position to negotiate. The Sand had broken the rules. They had been caught. Now they were going to pay. And the Sandaime Hokage drove a hard bargain. He was milking this opportunity for all it was worth. Money? We have no money. Our currency is worthless. They don't want our money, Kankuro snorted. We want theirs. It's why Dad came up with this whole stupid plan in the first place. And our jutsu is useless to them, because those old softies don't have the skills to learn them. We have poisons and puppets and stuff, things that only we can use, even if we gave away those techniques to someone else. They have teamwork and friendship and a few geniuses that carry everyone else. If they could use our secret techniques, they'd have copied it a long time ago. Isn't there something you can do? Temari asked. Baki only shook his head sadly. When you become Kazekage, you can let me know. Maybe I will, then Temari spat. Obviously, no one else in this entire damn village is capable enough to wear that hat. I'll become Kazekage and I'll bring Gaara home and you'll all be sorry. Mark my words. You do that then. Never had that old saying about not knowing what you're missing until it's gone had been so true. For all the times Temari had complained that wished that Gaara never existed, she now so desperately wanted to take him back. The Hokage's office. The Sandaime was not having a good day. Actually, he had been having a good day. The negotiations with the Sand Village were going just as expected. The temporary leader they had at the moment, a young jonin named Baki, was skilled, but not smart. At least, not experienced enough in administrative leadership positions to match the political savvy of an old man who had dealt with the likes of Danzo Shimura for his entire life. Although, to be fair, Danzo technically only disagreed with him on the execution, and not the final result. Baki had caved easily enough. He had been even easier to play than originally anticipated. While most people in his situation would have blamed their situation on a predecessor whom they had no control over and repeatedly deny everything, Baki had been completely open and honest. He did not want a war. He did not want any more lost lives. He did not want to have any remaining ties with the Sound, and had already cut all communication off with Orochimaru's subjects already. Hiruzen appreciated his candid nature and his nobility. He cared about his people. A man of war who wanted peace. He was an ideal model of a human being that anyone should live up to. Konoha was touted as the most honorable of the shinobi villages, but in reality, if every man on earth was like Baki of Sunigakure, none of them would be in this situation in the first place. The Sandaime, on the other hand, was simply laughing his socks off at his naivete. You didn't just do that, not in a political negotiation. The smart thing to do would have been to bluff his way out of responsibility so that when the bargaining round started, he would have begun with a higher hand, at least. Pretend that they were still considering war, and would do all they could to deal the same amount of damage to Konoha as Konoha would give, and be happy with whatever havoc they might wreak regardless of personal cost, if you will. Because it was true, despite the fact that they were leaderless, the Sand could still do a lot of damage, both to Konoha's infrastructure, and to their reputation, regardless of whether Konoha actually knew about their plans to invade or not. Of course the Sand wouldn't do that. Taking such risks were rarely profitable. But when you were locked in a room with another man and the only thing you were allowed to do was talk, then it was always good to push your boundaries. It wasn't as if mouthing off a few empty threats was actually going to cost you lives, unless you were stupid enough to say something out of place that did end up warranting a few assassinations here and there. That was why verbal negotiation rounds like these were set up in the first place. They were testing grounds for theoretical war moves to take place without actually having to deal with the consequences. Maybe it might have worked, or maybe it might have not. A bluff like that would be easier to see through, but at least by then, the negotiators would be too sick of the nonsense to push the case any further, and he might get to walk out of there with something useful on his side. Instead, Baki had placidly agreed to everything that the Hokage had dished out, and now, the Sand was stuck in a highly disadvantageous treaty. The loss of their Jinchuriki, though they hadn't had much use for it in the first place anyway, and the disqualification of all of their genin from this Chunin exam round had been just the beginning. Really, Baki was just too accommodating. Not even a single word of protest. Just because you were in no position to argue didn't mean that you still shouldn't try. Obviously, this man had never bartered at the farmer's market by himself before. The sellers always started at least twice the actual price of their product, and if they employed enough brute force and stubbornness, there was this one fishwife on the east side that refused to say a lower price out loud even if it was obvious that no one would buy it at that price. They might actually get high above the norm. Hiruzen liked Baki. He truly did. An honest, open man. But he was also the leader of a ninja village, and it would be embarrassing if he didn't take advantage of qualities like that. In all honesty, the Sandaime wasn't sure if Baki even understood all the implications of all the political terminology they had used during the discussion. God, he hated lawyers. It was why he had studied all the books and tricks himself, instead of relying on one to do it all for him. Too bad most other shinobi, Baki being one of them, didn't think this way. Then again, if every shinobi and pickpocket out there also had such skills, the world would be doomed. All that was left now was to actually sign the accords and start putting them into effect. So, if the negotiations had tipped almost completely in Konoha's favor, then why was he having such a bad day? Well, there were certain people in the world with the uncanny ability to ruin anyone's mood regardless of where it was before, and Kakashi Hatake was one of them. Although, to be fair, this time, it actually wasn't his fault. The conversation had started simply enough. A minor debriefing of everything that had transpired in the past few days, just to get Kakashi caught up to all that he had missed while he had been under Jiraiya's care. So you're saying Orochimaru killed the Kazekage, but before that, they were planning this full-scale frontal assault together. As in, walking in and blowing stuff up in the same exact non-ninja way I've spent the past few months beating out of Naruto, Kakashi deadpanned. For the 5th time, yes. And before you launch into a tirade about how stupid that is, Orochimaru was planning to use the invasion as a distraction for his personal plans, and Sand was hoping that would make us look like idiots in front of all the foreign dignitaries. Yeah, I got it, Kakashi said. Now what? In return for selling out everything they knew related to sound, I allowed the Sand 1 hour to get all of their affiliates out of the village, with the exception of one hostage to ensure they wouldn't be pulling this trick again. Might I ask who? Kakashi asked. You get 3 guesses, and the first 2 don't count. Kakashi frowned, and then blinked. Really? They're only Jinchuriki? I thought you were good, Hokage-sama, but damn, that's just cold. Half a second. Impressive. It had taken Danzo 5. They never liked him much. The 4th Kazekage was the only one who could control him, and with that man dead, he is more of a liability to them than he is an asset, the Sandaime shrugged. Better for us. I'm pretty sure they didn't like him because he was an unstable, homicidal maniac. The unspoken words Konoha, on the other hand, had no reason for disliking Naruto were ignored. Because now that Naruto was officially a ninja, and no longer an undignified prankster, his presence was much better tolerated among the general populace. I'm fairly certain that a faulty seal was causing the brunt of the mental problems. They had a medic Nin do it, not an actual sealing expert. That's why Jiraiya was already headed here when I was bitten. Kakashi asked. The Sandaime nodded. Huh. I expected you to just extract the bija and stick it in someone we know for certain is loyal to Konoha. Hiruzen glared, offended that Kakashi thought so lowly of his mercy. You think I'd kill him? It would be the logical thing to do. 1. I don't murder children, even if they are homicidal maniacs, as you put it, and 2. I would rather not condemn yet another child to that fate if I can help it. Kakashi was forced to concede that point, because it was true. He wasn't that far gone yet. A tiny victory for Hiruzen Sarutobi, but a victory nonetheless. 3. Because the Yondaime Kazekage's family still holds a good deal of influence in Suna, and his life might be advantageous to us later. Like it or not, he's still a member of a rival village. What will you do to make him loyal to us, if he was barely contained by his own village? Put him in some secret ANBU operation until he's so brainwashed that he'll be even less human than he is now. That was exactly what Danzo had suggested, actually. But given how restless the clans were growing, the Sandaime had decided to even out the playing field a little bit this turn by placating them instead. I intend to hand him over to Inoichi Yamanaka for his re-education. The subtler methods are more effective, there. That should be enough to get the clans to calm down a little bit. Maybe forget about whatever they were planning. But if they didn't, then that was fine, as long as the target of their ire was just Danzo and not Konoha itself, like the Uchiha had done. His job was only to keep the village stable, and the Fire Daimyo happy. This was already the case, and it would remain so, as long as either faction outgrew the other in power. Eventually, of course, that equilibrium would break, but he'd be dead of old age or out of office by then, and in all honesty he was just so sick of caring about a bunch of petty selfishness that wouldn't even be his problem anymore in a few years' time. Really, why couldn't those bastards just all shut up and start thinking about the village instead of themselves? They called him an asshole, that, he couldn't dispute, but he was only the one stuck making those difficult decisions because of the bullshit they pulled. All of this could have been avoided if everyone just put aside their pride and let things go. Actually, all of this could have been avoided if Danzo hadn't let his greed get the better of his common sense. Shibi Aburame and Inoichi Yamanaka by themselves would have let him get away with it, but Shikaku Nara was as vicious as the rest of them when provoked. That still leaves the problem of 2 Jinchuriki in Konoha. How do you know this won't cause another round of bija napping by Cloud? Kakashi said, cutting into his thoughts. We will deal with them, should the need come to that. So what happens in the finals of the Chunin exams then? Kakashi asked, giving up on that other topic. I don't want any of my kids becoming chunin so early. Your kids, Kakashi? Hiruzen thought. You won't have to worry about Shikamaru. He didn't make it to the final round. Kakashi raised an eyebrow. Really? He said, sounding a little more pleased than you'd expect from a man who was just informed that his star student had failed. Chakra exhaustion. He was not in fighting condition when the preliminaries rolled around, so we were forced to disqualify him. I see. Of course, the fact that he stood up to Orochimaru one-on-one and walked away with only chakra exhaustion warrants a field promotion to Jonin in and of itself. Kakashi cleared his throat. But like I said before, I will put them on a probationary period. They will remain genin under your care. When you feel that they are ready, or when they come of age, I will give them their promotion. They will not have to take the exams again. So, since we've established they have no hope of being promoted, I don't suppose I can just withdraw Naruto and Ino from the finals then? Kakashi asked hopefully. For fuck's sake, Kakashi, they'll be fine. And shut up about that, I care about their safety shite. I know you're just being contrary for the principle of it. Kakashi smirked at him insolently, and the Sandaime shot him a nasty look before continuing. If we're going to get some raised eyebrows from the dignitaries for having an Alkonoha final, we might as well give them our best. It's not like any of the other major villages are around to complain, Kakashi muttered. You made sure of that. Excuse me? Oh, I'm sorry. I meant to say, that sounds perfectly reasonable, sir, Kakashi snapped sarcastically. It better. Would you like to explain to me why you're acting brattier than usual today? Kakashi crossed his arms and looked away. Not really. Hiruzen rubbed his nose. Tell me, Kakashi, how are you really feeling right now? I care about you, Kakashi. Seriously, I do. I care about your well-being, and it's not just because I need strong ninja like you out there after we've already lost so many other good people like Minato Namikaze and my students and Itachi Uchiha. I swear. I care about you as a person. You are not just a valuable asset. Even though you are. Kakashi looked as if he would argue again, but instead, to Hiruzen's relief, he simply deflated and answered the question honestly. Not bad. My team is safe, and I'm alive, so, his voice trembled and trailed off. So something was wrong. Kakashi, please. How bad was the damage? Kakashi paused, and then lifted his headband to show a deactivated Sharingan. Chapter 20, Out of the Fire. The Hokage's Office. As soon as Naruto had received word that Kakashi-sensei was in the Hokage's office, he hadn't wasted a single second. Excuse me, you need an appointment, the Chunin at the desk protested, but Naruto didn't listen. Wait, I need your registration numbers. Stand in line, like everyone else, like he'd ever be so unawesome to wait in line. All these people were here to see the Hokage, not Kakashi-sensei. There was no line for Kakashi-sensei. His sensei was behind that door. His sensei, who he thought was dead, would never see again, even though the Sandaime had told him that Kakashi-sensei was alive. But still, he had been missing, and he missed the preliminaries where Naruto had totally kicked Choji's ass, in a friendly way because Choji was cool, and they all laughed it off afterwards. And they hadn't gotten to see Kakashi-sensei since the exams, and he missed Kakashi-sensei so much, and so what if it had only been a couple of days because it sure felt like forever. Kakashi-sensei, you're Aliya Vivi. Naruto hadn't gone kicking down doors and barging into rooms in a long, long time, and it sure felt good when he did. He gathered as much power as he could in his legs and tackled Kakashi-sensei in his strongest hug. In hindsight, that might not have been such a good idea. Had the Hokage's desk not been there, Naruto might have busted down a wall or something, and that was not good because then he'd have to pay for the damages, and that money would come out of his ramen funds. But come on, how many times in his life would he be allowed to tackle Kakashi-sensei and not get punted into the ground for it? Seriously, Naruto! What have I told you about kicking down doors like that? Ino yelled, yanking him off their teacher. You know he's injured. You might have made things worse. She turned around and smiled sweetly, never a good sign, at a very flustered-looking Kakashi-sensei, and then, to Naruto's great indignation, proceeded to tackle him back against the Hokage's desk just as hard as Naruto had. And you, don't you dare pull that self-sacrificial, almost dying bull on us again, she whispered. You humongous, horrible hypocrite! Naruto yelled. Ino dismissed him with a wave of her hand. What did I say about alliterative insults, Naruto? They suck. All right, you've had your turn, Shikamaru grinned, pushing her aside and wrapping his arms around Kakashi-sensei in the most boring way possible. But seriously, no more trying to get yourself killed, yes? Kakashi-sensei stood there awkwardly, as if unsure what to do with so much affection. Naruto decided to remedy that by smothering him in even more affection. After all, the answer to all of life's problems was either A. Data bail, or B. More data bail. So Naruto threw all the rules that Ino had taught him over the past few months out the window, and proceeded to push everyone into one ginormous group hug. Guy-sensei's rainbows and sunshine ain't got nothing on us. You gotta promise, Kakashi-sensei. No more running off and almost dying, okay? Kakashi-sensei stiffened, and for a second Naruto was afraid that they'd broken him. But then he unfroze himself, and smiling at them fondly said, "Shut up, brats. I do what I want. Now get off me." "No," said Ino. "Please?" "No," said Shikamaru. "You're crushing my ribcage. Too bad." "No," said Naruto, squishing them harder. Kakashi-sensei, still covered in a pile of genin, craned his neck back to face the Hokage helplessly. "Get these little monsters off me," he begged. "No," said the Hokage, smirking. "We're not getting off until you promise." Naruto yelled. "Fine. No more running off and almost dying. Promise." "My word doesn't mean jack, but I promise." For just that short moment of time, everything was perfect. And then Shikamaru ruined everything when he asked, "Wait, sensei, what happened to your eye?" 1 hour earlier, UCC, Underground Containment Complex Emergency Medical Attention Wing, Room 12. "How are you feeling, Kakashi?" Kakashi opened his eyes slowly, one at a time. "Just absolutely effing peachy," he rasped. A glass of water was shoved into his hands, and he took it gratefully. "Jiraiya? Stupid boy," the man muttered. "Jumping in the way of a cursed seal, really? Was that what it was?" Kakashi mumbled. "I was more concerned about saving your cute little students." Yeah, Jiraiya waved his hand. "Don't ask me how they're doing. I've been cooped up in this place with you for the last few days." Kakashi looked around. There were 2 sleeping Jiraiya clones, one in each corner. All 3 of them looked exhausted. "How many days is a few?" Kakashi asked. 2. "I think," Jiraiya said, rubbing at the dark circles underneath his eyes. "And a half. Maybe 3? I'll have to check again." "You were dying of chakra poisoning, kid. I had to seal off your entire left side." Kakashi frowned, and tried to twitch his arm. It felt slightly numb. And so did his left eye. He opened and closed it. Yes, he could still see. But he scanned the room, and even looked at his own hands. No chakra sight. None. Obito, still his eye, just no more Sharingan, Jiraiya shrugged. "In order to withdraw all of Orochimaru's nasty stuff coming out of the cursed seal, I had to block off everything else and then quarantine the whole area. Your body was destroying itself as it tried to stop the advancement of the foreign chakra. We can't let you able to move any energy through that area for a while, or the disturbance might cause the blocks to explode, and then it will start killing you again." It took Kakashi a while to process this information. "Oh. So, that means your balance will be off, your chakra control will be out of whack, and your ninjutsu and genjutsu will basically be useless until you somehow miraculously discover how to do one-handed seals. And before you decide to go and try something stupid, know that even if your chakra pathways weren't screwed up, we'd still have to keep the area quarantined. Otherwise, well, Orochimaru shit. AKA bad stuff. Get it? Orochimaru shit?" Jiraiya groaned. "Look, I don't want to really talk about it. Orochimaru's kind of a twisted sort of person, if you haven't noticed. Is there some living thing inside this seal?" Kakashi asked warily, poking the dark smudge. "Not exactly living, more like a piece of a living thing. You know how the Yamanaka do all their mind transfer stuff? This is like it, except instead of the whole entire mind, it's more like a tiny fragment," Jiraiya explained. "Of him. You destroyed his body pretty nicely, but I'm sorry to tell you, he's not dead yet." "What? Wait, what? What?" "Don't make me say it again." "You heard me right." Kakashi felt as if someone had dunked him in an ice-cold bath. "So all that was for nothing?" "Well, not really. Every moment he's out of commission is every moment we have to prepare for the next time he tries to come back. But there's a piece of Orochimaru inside this seal, and as long as I'm alive I'm also keeping him alive, not just you. Every other fool unlucky enough to cross his path and survive. Maybe you should thank your own body for negatively reacting to the point of almost killing you. In order to remain operational, the cursed seal needs to feed on the victim's chakra, and the way this one was designed, it wouldn't have been able to use lightning anyway. Now, if it had actually hit that boy it was intended for, that little shard of soul from Orochimaru would have assimilated into his more compatible chakra system like a parasite, and then it would have been really impossible to remove. Beyond my help. Oh, so there's more of them. That makes me feel so much better. So what happens in the people with faulty seals? Kakashi asked. Something like this? They die. Orochimaru went through hundreds of test subjects trying to perfect this thing, if you remember. That's why it's a curse. If it's not compatible, your body rejects it and you die. If it is, you're stuck with it controlling you for the rest of your life. You're a special case, kid. You really should have died. If Sandaime hadn't cared for you so much that he literally forced me to come back here at top speed, we would have been too late. That's nice. Look, Kakashi, Jiraiya snapped, I've already trapped it there. It's not going to come out, and in about 6 months to a year of no chakra, that thing will starve and die, and you'll be free of the chakra block. As for the rest, we're already working on it, so don't worry your pretty little head about it. Just focus on regaining your chakra control and improving your taijutsu, and then we'll see what else we can do. 6 months to a year. Kakashi's heart sank. And what about after that? Jiraiya sighed. This chakra pathway stuff is way out of my league. I'm just here for the seal work. Even the best medic know little about it. But we're not even there yet. We still have to wait for the curse seal to die, alright? Let's fast forward to next year. The curse seal is dead. Now what? Well, once the gates over the curse seal have stabilized, I'll be able to remove the chakra blocks on your left side. After that, it's all up to how your chakra pathways heal, Jiraiya said. If they do heal, then there's no reason why you shouldn't go back to normal with the proper training. If they don't, then you'll just be stuck with a dead arm, I guess. Is there nothing anyone else can do about it? Kakashi asked. If I could, I would, Kakashi. You're lucky to be alive. Kakashi looked down and started fiddling with his thumbs, a nervous habit that he hadn't seen since his father died. I see. Thank you. It's nothing, kid. Jiraiya ran a hand through his hair. Really? After all the shit that's happened to you, you deserve more than just survival. They sat in silence for a bit more. Kakashi really didn't know how to respond to that. After all the shit that he had done, he thought that the world kind of balanced things out in what he received and what he deserved. At least it was just an arm, and not his whole body, like Shikamaru had done to Orochimaru. No ninjutsu. No Sharingan, and no ninjutsu. Was everything that mattered to him destined to be stripped away? Last time he had felt this empty, it was when he had completed his 5th or 6th back-to-back ANBU mission and was about to collapse from exhaustion. Except instead of collapsing, he wanted nothing more than to just curl up on the ground and scream his own throat raw. Fine. That's fine, Kakashi said instead, because if there was one thing he was still good at, it was pretending that nothing bothered him. Thanks for the help, Jiraiya. Now, if you'll excuse me, my cute students are waiting. Jiraiya held him back. Take it easy, kid. You still need to rest. Kakashi shrugged him off and struggled to climb off the cot. At least let me find out how my team is doing first. It's been 3 days, hasn't it? They made it out of the maze without me, didn't they? Kakashi babbled, his mind still high from the phantom pains of the past few days. You really have a one-track mind, don't you, kid? Jiraiya sighed. Fine. I'm not going to pull a Tsunade and lock you in. But if you keel over or something, it's not my fault. Of course not, Kakashi said distractedly, already fully dressed and halfway out the door. At least go see the Hokage first. A lot of shit went down while you were out, and you should probably debrief before those brats of yours give you a heart attack. Jiraiya called after him, the Hokage's office. And so that was what we were left with, after everything was said and done. A ninjutsu master with disrupted chakra control. This was worse than Lee, who'd had his whole life to adapt to his disability. Kakashi-sensei had been relying on this skill his whole life, and just like all of the other problems I faced, they couldn't be solved simply by increasing my own skill levels. Otherwise, I'd have been in the library and the hospital digging up all the resources I could find about Fuinjutsu and medical ninjutsu ages ago. You said he'd be fine. I glared at the Hokage accusingly. I did not know it would come to this, the Hokage sighed. I thought Jiraiya would be able to fix things. Orochimaru turned out to be wilier than I expected. I shook my head. Some of the blame could go to him, for providing us with faulty information, presumably to keep our morale up right before Naruto and Ino would fight in the preliminaries, but it would be unfair to blame him for everything. Sand and Orochimaru started it, after all. So I had to forgive him. Why stew in my misery, when taking action would have better results? Will it ever get better? Naruto asked. Kakashi-sensei shrugged. You can still use taijutsu and other things though, right? Naruto asked. Kind of like Lee. I wanted to open my mouth and say that it would be a little harder than that, but Ino hushed me. I suppose, Kakashi-sensei said. I mean, it's not as if I just wasted the last 2 decades of my life mastering something that I can't even use now, but you know, that's how my luck flows. At least I'm still alive, right? Naruto beamed as brightly as 1,000 suns. Of course. You'll totally get better, and then you'll kick that chakra what's-it problem thingy in the ass and get even stronger. I mean, Guy-sensei is totally strong, too. And that Fuin what's-it thingy Shikamaru was trying to tell me about the other day minus that doesn't need hand seals either. So, see, instead of thinking about it like I can't use ninjutsu anymore, think about it like I can do all this other cool stuff now that I don't have to focus on ninjutsu anymore. Isn't that cool? Sure it is, I guess so. You will be alright, won't you, sensei? Kakashi-sensei smiled back. It looked extremely fake. Come on, Naruto. I'm never okay. The rest of the conversation consisted of Kakashi-sensei dodging questions, as usual, by distracting Naruto and Ino with training arrangements for the Chunin exam finals. Ino would be working with her family, and Kakashi-sensei was planning to hand Naruto off to a friend of his. None of it pertained to me, and so I ignored them and turned my thoughts inwards. Like Kakashi-sensei, I was substantially less optimistic than Naruto, but for an entirely different reason. Kakashi-sensei was injured because of Orochimaru, because of Konoha, because of us. In the first case, Orochimaru was already gone, for now, and for the third case, I could make myself stronger so that Kakashi-sensei wouldn't have to come running to rescue us every time there was an S-rank foe around. But for the second, well, we were ninja. I couldn't prevent circumstance, or orders, from sending my friends into a death trap. At least, not in my current position. What I needed were some more friends, but not just any friends, useful ones. I knew just where to find them. File room B. What are you doing here? Izumo asked. Just being curious, the kid said. It's not against the rules. Sure it's not, but we're really busy people. So I'd rather if you didn't get in our way. To make his point, Izumo heaved a large box of files from the ground and dropped it on the table. Undeterred by the heavy thump of paper, the kid simply cocked his head to the side and asked, You and Kotetsu are the Hokage's assistants, right? It would be accurate to say that Izumo was a little bit surprised. Not because it wasn't true, but most people didn't refer to Kotetsu and him by that more dignified term. Being a village of ninja, everyone saw through that for what it really was, glorified secretaries. Pencil pushers, just another desk chunin, when they weren't watching the front gates, albeit one in the Hokage's office instead of the mission room. He narrowed his eyes suspiciously. If you're here to make fun of me, scram. When you outrank me, then we'll talk again. I'm not here to make fun of you, the kid protested. I honestly don't get why people don't take you too seriously, just because you don't have a combat position. Administration is one of the most important tasks in Konoha, even if it doesn't involve anything life-threatening. I mean, yeah, it's boring, I won't sugarcoat that, but without it everything would fall apart. Izumo snorted, but that didn't stop him from feeling internally pleased all the same. Finally, someone who appreciated the work he did. Even if he didn't do much. If only everyone thought the way you did. Say, what's your name? I'm Shikamaru. Shika. Oh. You're Shikaka's kid. So, what can I do for you? Izumo offered, mind clicking as fast as it could go. After all, potentially befriending the son of the Jonin commander had to count for something. This might just be his chance to finally transcend the no-name rut he was stuck in. Not much. I was just curious about what exactly your work entailed. I mean, a village as big as ours goes through a lot of paperwork, right? He peeked over the edge of the filing cabinet. I see the Hokage at the mission desk all the time, but he can't possibly go through every single little D rank by himself. He helps out when he can, but you're right, everything non-classified below A or S rank is sorted by Chunin. Actually, even classified missions go through me. I don't get to see what they're about, or who they're assigned to, but it's pretty easy to tell what that million-yen change in the accounts means, Izumo explained. Every village works that way, pretty much. Can't waste valuable fighters on menial tasks, so they dump them on guys like us. Too smart to be wasted on D ranks, and too dumb to be sent out into the field. A tiny light bulb of confirmation seemed to turn on over Shikamaru's head. So, you get to know about what missions are coming in, even before they're posted in the mission room. Yeah. But I mean, unless it's a national emergency, you do have the right to reject a mission you don't want, Izumo reminded him. Shikamaru smiled. I know. But suppose you saw a mission that you really wanted to go on, and you wanted to get your hands on it before anyone else of the same rank. Izumo raised his eyebrows, and slowly, a grin made its way onto his face. Oh, we're finally getting to the good stuff. What exactly do you have in mind? Shikamaru tapped his chin. Let's start simple. How many missions does the daimyo send out? Not his wife, but the head honcho himself? Not many. Unclassified ones, at least. He's probably doing a lot of behind-the-books negotiations with the Hokage. Most regular tasks, he's got the 12 guardians for. Occasionally, however, he might just run into something not worth sparing his bodyguards for, but too difficult for regular workers to do efficiently. Suppose a mission like that came up, and the parameters were something my team was qualified for. Would you consider us for the task before any other Genin or Chunin team? Maybe. Suppose, in a few years' time, I've trained enough to be ready for a rank promotion, skills-wise, but I don't have a recommendation to be considered before the judging board. Would someone like, say, the Jonin commander be there to stand up for me then? I think that would be a very reasonable agreement, Shikamaru nodded. Izumo held out his hand. Then the next B rank from the capital just might very well be yours. This might have been just a rookie genin, but in that moment when Izumo shook hands with him, he seemed to stand taller than the Akimichi giants. The Yamanaka clan compound. Dad, what do you think will happen to Kakashi-sensei? Realistically, I mean. Inoichi lazily balanced a kunai on his finger. How so? His entire arm's messed up because of because of something highly classified and way above my clearance level, and now. She gulped. I want to be optimistic, but I don't want my hopes killed either. Shikamaru and I went and looked up chakra system injuries. They're the hardest ones to fix, and his whole specialty was, like, elemental ninjutsu and hand seals. It wasn't just fighting for him, it was like, one of the few things on earth he legitimately enjoyed. What's he going to do now? She's too sensitive, Inoichi thought. If he could have his way, he'd preserve that part of her forever. But this was Konoha, and their skills were always needed. As part of their pact with the village, all Yamanaka clan heads were required to respond to interrogation requests from Central Command, in the same way the Uchiha clan heads used to head the military police force before the massacre. And since interrogation and intelligence were both sectors of ANBU, it meant basic ANBU training was required for participation. You know, Ino, Inoichi said, I've known Kakashi Hatake since he was a child and I've fought alongside him for almost as long. That guy can worm his way out of any situation. It's why he's still alive, despite everything he goes through. You've got to remember, Rock Lee has no choice but taijutsu. Kakashi Hatake is still a very highly dangerous and accomplished ninja, with or without ninjutsu. I know he's still a good ninja, but my point is that he no longer has that, extra level of power. You know how Kurenai-sensei is a master of genjutsu and Gai-sensei is a master of taijutsu. Kakashi-sensei was the master of ninjutsu, and now he can't even use any for a while. Not that I want some crazy famous person for a sensei, because I can't really brag about getting pushed into mud puddles on a regular basis. But doesn't it hurt to think about completely losing something that you study for nearly your whole life? Like being a musician, and then waking up one day to find out that an illness has left you deaf, so now you have to start all over in life? It wasn't as bad as it sounded, really. Each sector of the Black Ops had different skills, and unlike the Hunter-nin and the Assassins, which had harsher training requirements, they were only required to know security procedures, like code words, hand signs, and basic self-defense. Easy stuff for Ino, but all A and B were required to have some level of desensitization, and that. Inoichi knew he should have started her on it by now, in the same way his father had started on it when he became a genin. Really, there's nothing to it. The mind transfer doesn't even hurt people, so it's best to just use it on the prisoners now rather than turn them over to the torturers. But for some reason, he didn't think it would sit very well with his daughter, who was too open-minded for her own good, and so he didn't. Perhaps. It is a major setback for him. I won't pretend that it isn't. But it is not the end of the world. Nothing is, not even death, Inoichi smiled, tapping the side of his head. It's all up here, As for his ninjutsu, don't worry about it. He's still young enough to find something else to specialize in, and in all honesty it's probably best for him that he does. It's no secret that he has barely average chakra reserves. Being a ninjutsu master should be reserved for people with unflagging power, people who can spam big and fancy explosions many times in a row. He felt a little guilty, exposing all of Kakashi Hatake's weaknesses to his daughter. All genin, this early on, subconsciously put their teacher on a pedestal of invincibility, just like how the academy students looked up to the Chunin instructors or how young children looked up to their parents. That he was such a strange man didn't detract from her perceptions of his power, On the contrary, only the best ninja could confuse a Nara. But she had to learn this at least, and quickly. In this world, there was no such thing as immortality, and assuming so of yourself or someone you cared about was extremely dangerous. Like Naruto, you mean? He nodded. Most people of his stamina and control ratio class should be in a more delicate field, actually, like medical ninjutsu, genjutsu, code breaking, and so on. That he made it all work in the first place is an accomplishment. He was a prodigy, after all. But if you asked me, it definitely wasn't the most efficient way for him to spend his talents. But you can't do medical ninjutsu or genjutsu with only one working arm, either, Ino pointed out. He said his chakra control's been practically eliminated. The world knows him for chakra. But ask anyone in ANBU and they'll tell you he was the best tracker, assassin, and swordsman in the force, because he didn't have to spend a single drop of it. Having to start over might be one of the best things to happen to him, even if it doesn't seem like it at the moment, Inoichi said. His problem isn't a lack of options. It's moving on. It's why he stands in front of a rock mourning men that died a decade ago. He might act like a leaf in the wind, unaffected by any insult the world throws at him, but really, he's just as rooted to the earth as the rest of us. Inoichi stabbed the kunai into the ground. Well, I should note he hasn't been wallowing before the memorial stone as much since your team was assigned to him. Maybe it wouldn't be too much to believe that you might also help him see the parts of himself that he cannot.